Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global South. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. US President Joe Biden and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky sign new bilateral deal on the sidelines of the G7 summit, focusing on long-term security relationship between the two allies. The US and South Korea warn of deepening ties between Russia and North Korea as Vladimir Putin is expected to visit Pyongyang in the coming days. France's far-right leader Marine Le Pen says that her party could win the upcoming snap parliamentary elections and form a national unity government. Health authorities in South Africa put on alert as the country records its second death from Mpox in a week, with 6 confirmed cases. And a Chinese court sentences prominent journalists who reported on the Me Too movement and Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests to 5 years in jail for inciting state subversion. Hello and welcome. We begin with some big updates from South Africa. Weeks after a weakened election verdict, it is a day of relief for the African National Congress, and more so for Cyril Ramaphosa. He is set to be re-elected as South Africa's president for a second term, as the newly elected parliament convened earlier today. Now, this is what South Africa's new National Assembly looks like. The ANC has 159 MPs, the DA has 87, Jacob Zuma's MK party has 58 seats, Julius Malema's EFF holds 39, the IFP stands at 17, and 40 seats are held by other smaller parties. For days, the fate of Cyril Ramaphosa hung in the balance as the ANC scrambled to find political partners. After non-stop deliberations since the May 29th general election result, where the ANC lost its majority for the first time in 30 years, and 11th-hour talks on Thursday, the African National Congress finally managed to form a unity government. For the first time in 3 decades as a democracy, South Africa today has a coalition government at the national level. The African National Congress has finally found partners in 2 rival parties, the John Steenhuisen-led DA or Democratic Alliance and the Inkatha Freedom Party or the IFP. There are other smaller parties too that have agreed to join hands with the ANC. While Cyril Ramaphosa has retained the president's chair, the ANC might have to give up key posts in the government to its unity government partners. Details on how these parties would coordinate and other broader parameters of the deal are yet to be revealed.
Privileged to report to you that after 2 weeks of thorough negotiations that only concluded after today's sitting of Parliament had already started, the DA has reached agreement on the statement of intent for the formation of a government of national unity. The Government of National Unity's presidential candidate will come from the largest party inside the grouping, being President Cyril Ramaphosa. Following his election today, President Ramaphosa will then exercise his prerogative to appoint his new cabinet from among the members of the Government of National Unity in consultation with the leaders of the constituent parties.
Former ANC firebrand leaders and their parties, Jacob Zuma's MK and Julius Malema's EFF, had already rejected the ANC's offer to be a part of the unity government. 58 MPs from Zuma's MK party boycotted the parliament sitting. But this did not impact the president's vote. South Africa's constitution states that at least a third of the parliament's 400 MPs must be present for a quorum to be present and votes to take place. The ANC alone holds more than a third of the seats. While he may have been re-elected for a second term, challenges for President Ramaphosa are far from over. Next week, Cyril Ramaphosa will be sworn in Pretoria, after which he will be unveiling his new cabinet. But finalizing this cabinet will be an uphill task, with unity government partners eyeing plum posts. Many ANC supporters were opposed to a partnership with the DA because the party is seen as a defender of the interests of the privileged white minority. With the ANC supporters on one hand and the expectations of unity government partners on the other. Cyril Ramaphosa needs to pull off a tough balancing act. Now, if the DA is unsatisfied with cabinet posts offered, it could threaten to withdraw support, and this would land the ANC back in trouble and the South African country in a greater political uncertainty. Now, for more on this, we have with us political commentator Ayanda Sishi-Wigzell, who is joining us live from Johannesburg. Welcome to Firstpost. Thanks for being with us, Ayanda.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this will be President Cyril Ramaphosa's second term. What are we expecting from his second term in office, and what does he need to do to deal with the falling popularity of the ANC party?
Well, this is it's going to be a two-pronged answer, because rightfully what you said in your introduction is that he's going to now have to officially be balancing government of national unity. So a lot of political organizations are going to be involved in his cabinet and in his government. So he's going to need to make sure that as the leader of the 7th administration, he's going to have to learn how to balance those relationships. But also you need to look at the state of the country right now. There is a high cost of living. Young people are struggling to get into university and afford to have education. There's a high number of unemployment. 32.9% is the national average, and the average for youth unemployment sits at 49.5%. And so there is going to be a lot of socioeconomic battles that he's going to be facing in the 7th administration. But also it's going to be a balancing act, right, of making sure that the government of national unity can continue, because we have seen what coalitions have looked like at a local government level, and they've been lackluster, to say the least. They've been unstable. I mean, here in the city of Johannesburg, we have had 4 or 5 mayors since the last local government elections, and so that reflecting on the National Assembly on a national level would be disastrous. And so I believe that the president in his second term as president of this country is going to have a really difficult task of making sure that the partners that they have taken into this national government of unity is going to be placated. They're going to need to make sure that they are happy within the positions that they are given. So it's going to be interesting after the president is sworn in to see where it is and how it is that those relationships are going to play out when it comes to the different positions that political parties are going to be vying for.
Absolutely. On that, Ayanda, looking at the cabinet posts, what are the unity government partners seeking?
So that is actually a really interesting conversation to have, because there are different ministerial positions that are really important. All ministerial positions are important in this country, but they are key cabinet positions that are really, really powerful and can enact real change in this country, such as the ministry from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. There is the Ministry of Finance as well. There is the Ministry of Trade and Industry, as well as the Ministry of Public Enterprises. So these ministries are incredibly important when it comes to the running and the administration of government. And so we have heard names such as Natasha Mazzoni being thrown out as Minister of Public Enterprises from the Democratic Alliance. We know that she has been very vocal in state capture while she was a part of the Portfolio Committee for Public Enterprises. We have also heard previously, but we know that I think that it's unlikely to happen, because we know that the economic freedom fighters are no longer part of the Government of National Unity. But Floyd Shivambu's name was being touted as possibly being the next Minister of Finance, but I doubt that will happen. And so there are going to be key ministerial positions that will have to be given to different political organizations to make sure that the cabinet looks like a government of national unity, because the African National Congress did not receive a mandate from the electorate to form a cabinet with majority of their members of their political organization. So unfortunately now for them, they are going to have to now share these political positions. So the seventh administration is going to be very interesting now to see how it is that these political parties are going to work together within government to make sure that the business of the day continues, because we know that they have deep-seated ideological differences. The Democratic Alliance has deep-seated differences to the African National Congress, especially when it comes to issues of justice and redress and ways in which we are supposed to run the economy. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how it is that these political parties are going to work together, how it is that cabinet is going to be constituted by the president of this country moving forward next week.
Yeah. And as we've mentioned, this is going to be a balancing act for Cyril Ramaphosa with members of the ANC who dislike the DA in particular. Now, is South Africa one step, or rather one misstep, away from greater political uncertainty if the DA and the ANC fail to work together?
Yes. There will be a lot of political uncertainty should political organizations fail to work together. And this is, I think, where the fear of where a lot of people are coming from, because we've seen the examples of how disastrous it can be when coalitions have failed at a local government. The city of Ekurhuleni, the city of eThekwini, here in Johannesburg, the lack of refuse collection, the lack of other services that are meant to come from the municipality were not actually coming because of that political failure. Basically, governments just stopped working. And so there is a huge fear of that happening at a national level. But what we are hearing from political organizations, I think a lot of people were saying that we wish that they were this calm and this mature during the election campaigns, instead of the politics that we saw playing out during the election campaign. Because what we're hearing now from a lot of political organizations is that they're willing to put their differences aside and are willing to work for the betterment of our democracy. And I think that's what we need more of. We need a bit more of maturity coming from our politicians, and a political will as well, to make sure that the will and the services that are meant to be done are actually going to be fulfilled by our politicians, and not just be there for the sake of being there for political power, but actually be there for the sake of the people. And now what we are seeing is that this electorate, for the first time in 30 years, has forced our politicians to make sure that they actually work together in tandem, because not one political organization got a mandate from the people. They are now being forced to work together to make sure that they get this country right. No one political party is going to be given the mandate to do that. They now have to do that together. And so it's going to be interesting to see whether or not cooler heads will prevail, because now we have a government of national unity, and now all eyes are going to be looking at South Africa to make sure that there's political maturity and there's political will to make sure that the issues that we have in this country are going to be fixed together.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for your valued insights and analysis and bringing us the latest.
Thank you very much.
Shifting focus now to Western Africa, amidst diplomatic spat between neighboring Niger and Benin. Unidentified assailants attacked a major oil pipeline that runs between the two nations. At least 6 Niger soldiers guarding the pipeline have been killed in the attack. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, which took place in parts of the southeastern Niger, though the area has a presence of groups linked to the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Now, this marks the first attack on security forces tasked with safeguarding the pipeline, which has been at the center of a row between Niger and Benin. After the attack, Niger has now shut the pipeline taps. The move signals escalating tensions between Niger and Benin. The nearly 2,000-kilometer pipeline runs from Niger's oil fields to the port of Seme in Benin, where Niger's crude is loaded into tankers for export. This means Niger is dependent on Benin for its oil exports. But in May, Benin blocked the shipment of oil, accusing Niamey of refusing to reopen its border to trade. Though Benin and Niger traditionally shared good ties, tensions began to brew after the July 2023 military coup in Niger and the arrest of the country's democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum. Benin, which is a member of the West African bloc ECOWAS, condemned the coup and imposed sanctions on the Nigerian military regime. In response, Niger's military closed the borders with Benin. The border closure began hurting Benin's economy, so the country decided to take a softer stance on Niger's junta. Benin's president has repeatedly called on Niger's military rulers to collaborate and reopen their side of the border. In return, Benin would allow Niger's oil exports via its ports, but Niger's junta has so far refused to agree. Another flare-up erupted last week as well, when Benin authorities arrested 5 Nigerian citizens at its Seme port, and they were accused of entering the port illegally using fake documents. Benin says that 2 of the 5 arrested are agents working for the Niger junta. Niger, on the other hand, accused Benin of kidnapping 5 of its nationals. Now, Niger's military junta said those arrested were a team from the Nigerian Chinese oil company, and they were there to monitor the loading of Niger's crude oil shipments to China. As the spat deepens, both the nations are facing the economic repercussions. Niger is losing out millions of dollars that oil exports could bring to the landlocked nation, while Benin is suffering due to the halted trade with a major partner. Ultimately, it is the people in both nations who are bearing the brunt of the hostilities. Our next story is from Central Africa. In a high-stakes battle unfolding in the Democratic Republic of Congo, tech giant Apple finds itself at the center of a controversy. The Democratic Republic of Congo is mulling legal action against Apple. The country has accused the Silicon Valley powerhouse of using minerals that it says were illegally mined in its territory. Now, the DRC claims that these minerals were smuggled into neighboring Rwanda. Their source of origin were then allegedly blurred. The Democratic Republic of Congo says that Apple is linked to false labeling of the minerals in Rwanda so that they can be sold as a part of the global supply chain for technology products. The country is being represented as a group of international lawyers who are based out of France and the United States. The minerals that are in question are tantalum, tin, tungsten, and gold, and all are important for the manufacturing of electronic devices. These minerals, grouped together, are collectively known as the 3TG. In the Democratic Republic of Congo and surrounding countries, they are referred to as quote-unquote conflict minerals. They are often mined under conditions that fund armed groups and exploit local populations. So their extraction process involves human rights abuses and unethical practices. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the world's leading producers of tantalum, followed by Rwanda, and numerous armed and rebel groups operate in the Democratic Republic of Congo all of them vying to gain control of the illicit trade in rich minerals. The country has been gripped by violence and conflict since the 1990s. Tensions resurfaced in 2021 when an armed group called the M23 started capturing parts of the country. Rwanda has also been accused by the UN and Western countries of supporting the M23 rebels in a bid to control swathes of land rich in mineral reserves. The Democratic Republic of Congo's lawyers accuse Apple of knowingly sourcing these conflict minerals. Now, this implicates Apple in aiding a supply chain that indirectly funds armed groups. The tech giant has already received a formal notice. It was issued back on the 22nd of April to Apple's CEO Tim Cook. The letter, titled Blood Minerals, warned Apple of discontinuing this practice. And here's what the Democratic Republic of Congo's letter to Apple said. It has become clear to us that year after year, Apple has sold technology made with minerals sourced from a region whose population is being devastated by grave violations of human rights. The iPhones, Mac computers, and accessories that Apple sells to its customers around the world rely on supply chains that are too opaque and that are tainted by the blood of the Congolese people, unquote. Now, this is the main crux of the entire controversy. Amsterdam and Partners, the law firm representing the DRC, has written a 53-page report outlining its claims against Apple. The government lawyers also held talks with President Felix Tshisekedi to discuss the course of action. Apple, meanwhile, denies any such malpractices. It said it regularly audits smelters and refiners in its supply chain, and that its supply chain doesn't directly or indirectly finance or benefit armed groups in the DRC or any adjoining country. On Thursday, DRC's lawyers criticized Apple's brief and dismissive response. They said that the response reeked of arrogance. Now, the DRC's legal team has convened a meeting in the capital, Kinshasa, and they are exploring various legal avenues. They suggested similar legal challenges could be initiated against Apple in multiple countries around the world. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid reports of coups and crises that dominate the headlines from the continent, we get you positive stories that often get overlooked. Now, our story today is from Kenya. About 70% of Kenyans rely on wood as fuel to prepare their meals, which has led to a rampant rise in respiratory diseases. But now the East African country wants to change that, as it aims to shift to clean cooking fuels. Our report brings you the details.
For many women in Kenya, the first task in the morning is to keep the kitchen running. Women gather firewood, then make the morning tea. But soon enough, entire walls and wood pillars are covered in soot. The room is filled with smoke. And as people sip on their morning tea, they cough. Some even have trouble breathing. All of this because of the smoke released by the firewood that most Kenyans use to make food.
I have been using firewood all my life and wake up every morning to fetch it. However, the smoke from the firewood makes me cough for long periods and causes difficulty in breathing. LPG gas is quite expensive and I cannot afford it.
Respiratory diseases have been the most prevalent diseases in Kenya for the past 6 years, with 19.6 million reported cases. And officials say biomass, like firewood, is the largest contributor to these diseases. Then why do people continue to use firewood in their kitchen? Because clean cooking options are too expensive for many. The high prices of clean fuel remain an obstacle to many low-income Kenyan families. But now, change is underway. Slowly and steadily, Kenya is shifting towards cleaner cooking fuels like liquefied petroleum gas or LPG. These fuels are good for people's health because they reduce a person's exposure to harmful pollutants. And what's more, they positively impact the environment as well by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now, while clean modern cooking fuels are increasingly available in the country, they are yet to overcome consumer awareness, affordability and accessibility barriers. And to combat this, Kenya launched a clean cooking strategy in 2022. The government aimed towards making a behavioral change by advocating for the adoption of cleaner cooking methods. It conducted public awareness campaigns on promoting clean cooking in Kenya. Now the ministry is in the process of developing a national clean cooking strategy and an electric cooking strategy. In fact, the Ministry of Energy has proposed to address clean cooking as a human rights issue. Kenya has also announced the Cooking Gas Growth Policy. It aims to reduce the cost of LPG for households by nearly half. It requires all newly built affordable housing to be fitted with facilities to use LPG for cooking, thus providing the right environment for households to switch to LPG. Meanwhile, Kenya has also invested more than $200 million last year to build facilities that could handle and store LPG. A 45,000-ton site is in the works in the city of Mombasa. According to the government, this can help make clean cooking gas less expensive and adopt universal clean cooking. Clean, affordable and scalable modern cooking solutions are the need of the hour in Kenya because the adoption of LPG will not only decrease the number of cases of respiratory diseases, it will also reduce deforestation and climate impacts from black carbon and methane. In Kenya, where more than 9 million households rely on traditional cooking fuels, change will be tough. But the nation is determined to gradually shift to clean cooking, which not only aims to help humans, but also the climate.
And that's it for this Friday edition of the show. We will see you again on Monday at the same time. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.